Hey, I'm Tim, and this is the Love at First Sight podcast, a podcast for SaaS CEOs and developers that truly want to learn more about design and care about it, but they're not designers that find it too complex. In every episode, we discuss how to design products that become sticky and unforgettable. We dive into the topics of taste, UX, growth, and conversions, and we share practical tips and frameworks you can add into your development process. Enough with the intro, so let's dive into today's episode. So welcome to the podcast officially as well. And thanks a lot for joining me today. As I mentioned before, the first thing we always go through is who you are, what is your story actually, and what are you currently working on? And then we're going to dive into all the interesting topics we have in the agenda for today.
Sure. Excited to do it. So my name is Alicja. I'm a product designer. Currently, I work at Buffer, which is a social media management platform. I've been working as a designer for 10 years now, so like around a decade. It's been a while. Mostly focusing on SaaS products and helping people develop the value for customers, getting things off the ground, so like getting companies up to speed, but also for works for bigger companies. I worked, for example, for Toggle, for Workfront, for Sourcegraph, which is Sourcegraph was quite interesting because it's a code search tool for developers, so quite a technical audience, in comparison to Buffer, where I work now, which is like completely focused on single users. And at Buffer specifically, now I work on Community, which is a tool for replying to comments and connecting with people from your social media channels. And also on Insights, which is quite interesting, like a new thing coming up, where we use data we already have to provide you with insights that actually will change how you post and how you create content. So I'm super excited about that as well, because it will be like a new approach to dashboards and seeing your insights about social media.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Yeah, and with Buffer, I've been always curious, like, what is the core user of Buffer? I know it's not part of the agenda, but like it's a topic that I've been always thinking about when designing. It's like, who is the user? And with Buffer, I can imagine that the audience is super broad, right? Like you have all kinds of different users.
The audience is quite broad. So the philosophy of Buffer has been for a long, long time going down market. So going to small creators who are just getting started or started growing, so that now they treat their social media channels a little bit more. They need to post systematically. They treat it seriously. Maybe they are business owners and social media is like a way for them to get clients, to get visibility. So that has been in history for a long time. And that's why Buffer has built very strong tools for connecting with these people, like writing articles, serving them with content, and also in product as well. This is very skewed to that audience. But we also serve bigger customers that are agencies, for example, with multiple clients that they create social media posts for or manage social media for. And we are currently, so we've been in a phase where we go down market and we really pay attention to these customers. We want to maintain this, but we also now are working on many more features that are collaboration focused, which are for bigger teams and for larger companies. And this is a completely different way of approaching the product, like different priorities. And it's interesting design-wise how you think about it, because every single flow needs to work for a user who has like one channel and maybe gets 10 comments a week. And then for a user who has 8 or 10 or 20 channels from different customers and they get multiple comments a week. And you just have to marry all of that.
Yeah.
Which is quite interesting when you think about it.
Yeah, 100%. That's been a challenge, like with some of the teams that I've been working on, designing for small, like for solo cleaners, for example, for ZenMate, which is for cleaning businesses, and for large teams with like 20 plus cleaners. It's not only the design complex that changes, it's also the needs. It's how the actual feature is going to work on. Yeah, has to work like, but yeah. It's always an interesting challenge.
It is. So for example, for Community, the tool where you reply to social media comments, as a solo creator that gets like 10, 20 comments a week, you want to reply to everything. Every comment counts. Everything is like so important. When you are a bigger account, you get so many comments that you may not be able to reply to all of them. And the question is then how you select the ones that are valuable, how you select the ones that are going to spark further conversation. So completely different mindset, like how you optimize, how you make things more efficient. And for people who get no comments, like they open Community and they have no comments for a week, for 2 weeks. How do you make the product still interesting and engaging for even different empty states, right?
Yeah, 100%. Cool. Okay. So for the topics for today, the first one that we have in the list is the topic of taste and of combining growth and product growth with, we call it delight. You can call it also taste or art, let's say, like branding, illustration, motion, and so on. Like combining the growth design with the more artistic visual design. So my first question on this is, how do you define taste as a designer? What are some thoughts on this topic?
Taste, how you define it. So it's a really weird thing because with designers, I have this thought that like everyone thinks that they are sort of a designer and they have their own taste. So with programming, for example, engineers, I'm not going to go and say, hey, you've coded it the wrong way because I think so. I have this feeling. I can see that this code is like messy or whatever. That's not how it's going to work. But people see design and then can tell, like, I like it, I don't like it. They may not think about why I like it. So nobody comes to the product and they say, oh, I like the color balance, or like the proportions are really great. The composition of the screen, amazing. But, they feel it. And as a designer, you're designing for a feeling sometimes. And there are many products in the past where they won the market. Like, for example, Slack. They had very similar features to other similar tools that they risen after Slack was successful. But Slack was still like the most delightful, colors-wise, interactions-wise, etc. So I think that to define taste is just something that resonates with many people, maybe. And like how you shape your taste as a designer, you watch other designers' work, you define what you like based on the work that you're doing, based on what users react to it. And I think taste is a different thing. So visual taste, when it comes to like composition of a painting or an illustration, completely different thing than UX taste when it comes to like interactions, etc. Yeah, I would say it's like about understanding what the right balance is, if I were to make a definition. But is it a correct definition? Maybe it's not, encapturing everything, right?
Why I love these questions, because there is no right or wrong answer in a way. It's just like when you think about, for me, I'm always interested into hearing more about what comes to your mind when I ask you about taste, like balance between stuff, like different types of taste is another one that you mentioned, like UX taste on the UX versus UI versus like on an illustration, it's all different. Yeah. And then the idea of delight is something that I really like that you also mentioned when it comes to taste, because taste is like, it's an overused and overhyped term nowadays. And like I'm kind of a sick of LinkedIn content where people say, yeah, in the world of AI, taste is everything. Taste is your moat. Like everybody's obsessed with finding a new moat. I'm like, guys, come on. Like this is not how business works on this part. Yeah, it feels like people are just trying to promote things by calling them the new moat, essentially. Because with brand, it's also for something very abstract. We're into brand design, but brand has many, many layers. Like brand can be copy, can be messaging, can be positioning strategy, can be your visual identity, can be your logo. It's like it's a collection of hundreds of assets that all together create this feeling that people have when they hear about you, which is how you could define, let's say, brand. Yeah, I feel like the idea of taste is very, taste and delight. I feel like they're really close as concepts. And the reason I like delight more as a term is because it's more practical in a way. Like with the example that you shared with Slack is a good one. Slack was delightful and felt like the team had great taste. It was because of the copy in the release notes, the micro copy in the app, that was not a technical, boring product. It was the funky design and funky logo that they came up with and everything. So, yeah.
And I think that a lot when it comes to delight comes also with interaction and how clear the UI is at the beginning. So how understandable it is. So if you, as a user, you come to the product, it looks great, it looks trustworthy. I think that trustworthy is like the threshold that we should be aiming for. Then it works well, it helps you accomplish a thing relatively fast, then you're sold. Then you're delighted by a certain thing. You're surprised by how easy or how effective that was. I wouldn't over-index on how things look or how the copy is, or like it's the general flow and how quickly you accomplish a goal that contributes to delight. Because I see many people saying like small UI interactions, they contribute to delight, or hover states or whatever it is. Yes, they contribute, but if they don't achieve the goal, you can have all the hover states and all the animations in the world, and they will not be delighted.
Exactly. It's like delight is a layer you add once you have solved the problem. Like that you build something that really gets the job done, people are happy, and then you make it more delightful. Yeah, 100%. I'm also curious on this topic. You're a product designer that has also illustration and animation background, right? You're also into arts and painting. And I'm curious to hear from you, how does this influence your design brain, let's say, and your design process compared to other designers that have maybe, like, let's say if they come from a UX background or just, visual design background and focus on visual design, like this diverse background, how does it have an impact on you and how you design?
I think it has impact in a way that some things I would say came a little bit easier for me. So like understanding colors, understanding composition, understanding how elements work together in the interface. Like that was more natural to me. And I feel like if you're coming from like a technical background, that may be something that you need to spend more time learning. But also there is this interesting thing where if you're painting or creating illustration, I can walk you through the process, but I cannot explain how I came up with it. It just came to me. I just saw it in my head and I then produced it. And there is a very similar experience in UI design and UX design that I have, that I analyze and then I come up with a solution. And it's quite hard for me to explain like how I came up with it. I can reason why it is good, etc. But the process is something that sometimes I kind of struggle to explain. And I feel like many people who come like from a technical background, they have the thought process more structured in their mind. I have to dig for this thought process because I work more intuitively. And they have like a completely different way, which is very helpful for teaching people. So when you have students, I had to learn it over time to explain how I came up with things, what were the alternatives that I was considering, etc. But people, for example, who used to be engineers, it kind of comes to them easier, I've noticed. Of course, not all of them, not every single person is the same, but I've noticed this trend that like they struggle to understand it just came to me, like I just saw it in my head and then I produced it and it worked. And they're like, okay, but like there was a process. I'm like, there was, but I can't really explain it that well.
Yeah. That's something that I've experienced as well sometimes, yeah.
And I think it's also from like artistic perspective and delight perspective, when working on things like empty states, onboarding screens, etc., that include visual elements or incorporating brand elements into the UI, I think it's easier for me to bridge those two worlds. Sometimes I find that UX designers, they struggle to like apply brand into the interfaces. So whatever is shown on a website and how the website looks like, for example, or other materials that are sometimes created by another designer who's like a web designer or brand designer. Translating that sometimes is difficult because product has such different needs and we cannot use like such vibrant colors or big elements, or like it's a very different world. So maybe that made it easier for me to translate also brand into the product.
Yeah, I fully hear you on this. And for me, I come from an engineering background. And so for me, I'm like a product designer that is really about strategy, UX, and like technical complex and these kind of things. And in the team, we have a brand designer also that it's not that we separate the process, and I don't do brand design, but I'm not an illustrator. I do some parts of the visual design, and then Joe comes and adds the delight side, like the delight and branding on the product. And it's really what you said, it's very different needs. We saw it, for example, we had the design called yesterday with Brittany and so for another team we're working with, previously another product designer in the team. And we were discussing about illustrations in the onboarding flow, and we realized that these illustrations, it's a new thing that we're coming up with because they don't use an illustration on the website. It's mostly photography because the illustrations don't make sense necessarily there. And also the illustrations had to be more minimalistic and with more white space so that they don't distract you from the core flow. And they actually make it more delightful. They add a bit of emotion. They make it more branded and less boring, essentially. And they contribute a bit to the UX as well by visualizing the questions, let's say, that we ask on the onboarding. It was very interesting to see how designing an illustration for the product has very specific needs because it lives in a very different environment compared to a website where it may need to be more colorful or more flashy. Like it needs to attract more attention in a way, and it may have more details because it needs to tell a full story, let's say, through the illustration. So yeah, I fully hear you on this.
That's true. And also in product illustrations, in many, many cases, it is just like enhanced UI. So UI with some sparkle added to it, let's say.
True.
Whereas on websites, they can be abstract, they can be humans or whatever you want to put there, like depending on the brand. But I can share an interesting, like funny anecdote. When I was trying to get my first job, like it was like an internship, and the recruitment process was quite interesting, where there was like 10 people during a workshop, and we were workshopping like a UX solution. And based on this workshop and how you were collaborating, etc., they were going to invite you to the next step or not. And I then later found out that a big thing that convinced them to eventually hire me was that I was great like doing the UX design work. Of course, the basics were covered, but I also just stood up and started drawing things. And like this feeling like loose with drawing and being able to draw on the spot and explain your ideas visually, that was like a big selling point that I wasn't aware of, but apparently like it's a good thing. So all the people who are in artistic schools right now, UX design might be a thing for you.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, and the whole idea also of just kind of a designing on the spot, like coming up with sketches, like, yeah, that's an interesting one actually, because that's, now that you mentioned like a personal story on this, is that in the past I used to feel that I need to serve polish designs with the teams that we're working with. So let's say, yeah, for the design call, when we do the Tuesday, I have to present designs. And once I started shifting my mindset to, I present versions of a design, and a version can be really crap. It can be an ugly sketch that gets the idea through until, like, in order to discuss with the team and see if it's the right direction. It was a big unlock, like in terms of the mindset, and also from an efficiency and process point of view, life got very much easier. And on what you're describing, it's a good one, because when you're painting, it's normal to start with the sketch, right? But when
Yes.
you're designing, yeah, maybe you do a wireframe, but when you do a mockup, it's either bad or good. There is no kind of a sketch of a mockup. So that's a good one on how painting can have an influence on think about like the actual design and the process to come up with it.
Yes, and you can explore many more things. And it's interesting that, for example, engineers, you start with something rough. It doesn't work perfectly at the beginning, and you're willing to show it to the team like as a V0 version of whatever you are trying to achieve. And designers, like, we're perfectionists. We want everything to look perfect from the very first presentation, which usually leads to comments about the color of the button, which was not even included in the design, but that's the common story where people focus on these unimportant elements, I would say. So sketching,
True.
that's a good recommendation.
It's actually misleading, and that's the power of, people call it wireframing. I say black and white mockups. Like, that makes more sense, because I just see it as a mockup with less details and like just black and white color essentially. And this can be useful sometimes because it's really what you said. It forces people to focus on the right thing, which is content, composition, flows, and that's it.
Yes.
Not if they like a border or anything like that. So yeah, fully agree. I feel now it's a good time to, now that we've just been discussing like design process, to actually jump into AI stuff and ask you, what is your experience with, so with AI, there are two ways to think about it. The one is I design features that use AI behind the scenes. So I design AI products. And the other one is I use AI to design products, no matter if these products use AI or not. So I want to touch first the process part and ask you, what is your experience with using AI into your design and product building process, I would say. So yeah, that's my first question. I have some follow-ups, but let's keep it open-ended and just ask about your experience. I'm really curious.
Sure. So there's a lot of ups and downs when using AI as a designer. Let me say that first. So when it comes to process, so all of us had to learn to use AI to a certain extent, or at least explore how we could use AI in certain extent, especially with like pressure from the companies that we work for and overall industry. It seems like everyone is just going for AI right now. But I find that AI is great for certain things, but certain very like small, simple tasks, you can overcomplicate it and spend so much more time trying to like move a button or create a button somewhere, or just like design something super simple that would take you like 10 minutes in Figma. You're trying to like prompt your AI and just like running out of tokens is just mess, especially at the beginning when you're learning and you don't know about like efficient prompting, etc. So I went through all of these phases. I think that using Claude and using Claude Code is definitely a good way of prototyping, and it unlocks a lot of things when it comes to usability testing, for example. So you have a more realistically looking and realistically functioning prototype, even though it's like not production ready, but it is enough for you to test the design, and the results are more credible. Also, Claude, for example, for me is like a great brainstorming buddy where maybe I will not use its ideas when it comes to, hey, this is how the UI should look like or how this interaction should go. But at least it like gives me one more step in a different direction, sometimes just thinks completely differently than I do. So I would say like brainstorming buddy and prototyping for usability testing. when it comes to design system management, when it comes to designing from scratch, when it comes to solving problems, I'm like 50-50 on that. I don't think it's really where it needs to be for designers to like be replaced or take all the busy work from you. Unfortunately, it's not that there yet, but I've heard that Claude is working on some like their own UI design tool that is going to be released soon. I've seen something on social media. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not.
That's spicy news. I didn't know about it.
It was a spicy news. I'm like, okay, that would be interesting, because all the like the Figma MCP now is better than it used to be, but it's still like you have to learn how to properly use it, and it's just it's not like you start using it and then you are like a great designer. And at the end of the day, you need to think through interaction as a designer. You can speed up the parts of your process, but you're still needed there. So that's an overview. So depends on the part of the process. Like sometimes I'm 50-50 on things. Sometimes like I'm like 80 on things. Sometimes I'm like, okay, let's not use AI for that at all. So
can you share, if you think about some recent projects you worked on and used AI, could you share some specifics on how you used AI or like, oh, that was useful? And then I'm going to share also some stories from my experience, but I'm curious, like if you have, let's say, any maybe skills or like specific setups that you're using, or that's why I'm asking for a project so that we can see some more kind of a hands-on example on how you use AI as a designer.
Sure. So I think the most recent one, and the ones where we used AI the most frequently, let's say in the process, was my brainstorming about insights for Buffer. So basically, I wanted to discover insights that would be helpful for people and that we can create based on data that we already are getting into our system. And this project is like in progress. So I can't share like details, but I can share the process. So I worked with Claude and fed it information about what data we're getting, what the product is. So I established the whole project with background information. And then I asked it to start brainstorming these insights. And I was going back and forth. It came up with great ideas. I came up with some ideas, and then it came up with a dashboard that was visualizing all the charts. I had to do a lot of work when it comes to, because it sometimes was like, I wouldn't say hallucinating, but sometimes it was like, okay, but what this data means. Like sometimes this was displaying data, like the Claude was displaying data for the sake of it. That was a little annoying. But as I said, like this collaboration and brainstorming buddy, I was, okay, change this chart. Maybe let's merge these two charts together. And the outcome was that I came up with like a concept for, I think, around 40 insights that we could choose from, which is a great number when you think about the project. And I've created so Claude created the HTML for me with all the charts. They were interactive and they had like some mock data. So the other, like, then we went parallel. We started analyzing as a team regarding feasibility. So technically, are we able to implement these charts, etc. But we've also fed Claude code, this HTML file that I've created, and we asked it to use Buffer styles and Buffer design system to try to visualize how it would work in our product. And presenting that to the team was like a really great experience. You could experience how things would work. So that's a relatively simple case to execute, but it's also like sped up the workflow so many times, because I didn't have to go and design every chart by hand. I then didn't have to go to the developers for them to implement these charts based on my designs. We could just bypass the whole the whole process to have a visualization and see if this is something that would resonate with people, that would resonate with our team internally. And it was so much easier also to have conversations with engineers about feasibility when we had all the information and the visualizations. So that was helpful.
I see. So it's what I hear from you is prototyping new features and creating interactive prototypes is where you've seen it being very, very useful.
Yes. And if you have a proper setup, you can feed these prototypes and you just like add them to your product, mock them into your product so they look like a part of the product for usability testing. But I don't want to like skip over to prototyping. I think that the brainstorming part of it was also great. I wouldn't came up with all these ideas by myself, just like sitting there. Yeah.
So it's the figuring out the solution through a conversation, like what should I add and so on. I fully agree. On this one, my experience of a project that I'm currently working on, we're building a customer portal for ZenMate. So let's say you own a cleaning business, you want to be like very modern, so you don't want to do everything by just rely on emails. You want to be able that your customers are going to be able to log in your through your website into a portal and see all of the future cleaning appointments, their invoices, they can pay invoices and so on. And we're building this feature, and it was the first project that I said, you know what, let's start in Claude. Let's pretend Figma is not there and see what happens. And it was really interesting because for me, it was the time that I actually fell in love with AI a lot, because I realized I don't have to design static screens anymore. And that was like a big moment where I was like, yes, this is fun. I'm building. I'm not conceptualizing just like ideas in a static screen. And it was really way faster, because within 3 weeks, I could have like a prototype the dev team could look at, and like in that prototype, I worked on micro animations and like all kinds of details that I couldn't work on Figma. And also like in terms of efficiency, just to give you an example, this portal has like 610 pages, right? 610 screens. We want to make everything very branded because it has to be branded, like brand extension of our customers. So they need to be able to customize the colors and the logo, and they apply one color, and then the full UI should adjust to this color and still feel clean, and so on. And I wanted to prototype this with the 10, 20 colors we're going to offer. And it was very easy with AI. Doing this in Figma, cumbersome. And the reality is, like, if something is really hard to do, chances are that you're not going to do it because you will run out of time, you won't have the energy because of all kinds of things. And with AI, so that I can actually do more things during design that I wouldn't be able to do in Figma. So it's not just the efficiency, but also opening new doors for me. Micro animation is another one. How should the tabs feel like? And also the navigation. I wanted to test, what if it's floating tabs at the top or at the bottom or a sidebar? Which one feels right? Let's give it a prompt and prototype 3 different solutions to see which one feels right, instead of playing with pixels and spending 1 hour in Figma to do this. So it was one of the moments I was like, whoa, this is fun, this is cool. And it's also, it's also very easy because we didn't need to reuse an existing design system. And right now we're in the process of figuring out how can we prototype in ZenMate with the existing design system, new stuff, because that was a brand new thing outside that doesn't need to use the design system because it's made for our customers. So we can start with a clean, brand new design system. And that's the challenge that I'm currently working on. And I haven't figured yet, like that's something that we need to investigate, how to integrate the design system and all these kind of things. But yeah, that was a big one for me. In terms of the brainstorming, for me, where it was useful, it was tapping on insights that we have. So we're creating a workspace, AI workspace for the design team, where we can tap on existing knowledge, like all the support tickets in Intercom, transcripts of calls, where we can ask Claude, take a look at what's in there from the last 6 months and give me some ideas on what should be in that portal, for example, based on what people have been asking. That's for me another big unlock, is being able to access all this existing knowledge without having to go and literally filter tickets and spend days reading all these tickets, which is also like a big headache and not really doable in the end of the day. So analyzing existing knowledge as part of the design process is a nice one. And my last comment to add on what you said before, the productive part, you mentioned the example of things that can happen very quickly with Figma, and you don't have to use AI. I'll bring another example of AI sucking your time, which is, I would call it a bit of the shiny object syndrome. For example, this week, I got an email from a design newsletter about synthetic user testing. You can come up with virtual personas in AI and simulate user testing. People have many thoughts about it. Many people hate it. I was like, let's give it a try. In this newsletter, they say it was a good one. It doesn't replace user testing, but it can show you some red flags. I was like, let's give it a try. I wasted 2 hours of my time with no end outcomes. Like, why? Now I have to work until late today because the actual work that I need to do is behind now, and I need to catch up with everything. So with AI, the thing that I've been struggling with personally is, in this world of new tools popping up every single day, and every tool is being marketed as it's going to change your life, it's going to be mind-blowing, you're going to be a world-class designer without even trying, all this kind of stupid stuff that we read every day online, it's really hard to kind of stay productive and focused into this environment and really filter information and see what you can trust versus what you can't. I'm curious, have you ever used paper.design? Have you heard of this
tool? But I was recommended that. So I haven't had a chance to like actually try it, but it's like on my list to things to try.
I'm curious.
It's a very long list.
Because I see people talk about it online and hyping a bit the tool. I gave it a quick try. I was like, I don't get it. It's like Figma, but using actual code. And what's the big deal? Because you cannot create interactive prototypes. And I'm like, what is the point of creating a Figma screen with code instead of layers? Like, what is the value for me? Maybe the fact is using the design system and you don't have to maintain a separate design system. I'm not sure if that's the unique selling point, but I've been trying to understand what is the actual full value of Paper.design. It seems like a nice tool, but that's the other thing. Understanding what is the actual value is sometimes a problem with AI tools. And yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that also many design tools, they show very simple use cases when they like promise certain things, or they focus on web design or like a very simple design of an application. Whereas my problem is I have so many components, so many variants, then they have like theming of light and dark theme. And I have to keep up with all of that and then build something on top of that and then think about how it would affect components in different places of the application. I don't feel they solve these problems because it's very hard to solve. And they usually demo simple solutions, which is like, okay, it works for creating a dialogue. But then what happens if I want to add a new component that affects like 8 places at buffer? Well, probably it's not going to be a tool for this job, unfortunately. So I think that it's an overpromising, maybe unintentional, but it's not solving problems of designers who are working in bigger companies with large design systems, and we face completely different problems.
That's a very good point. And there is a big difference between evolving an existing product and designing something brand new from scratch. Big difference. And the use cases you described 100% as well. Like they all sell you that we build a tool that nobody will ever have to write code. And then the example is just a simple table. And like, yeah, guys, I think this existed for years now. Like we need it to perform in complex cases. Like what about nested models and complex views and scrolling containers and all these kind of things that usually front end gets tough. So yeah, that's a very good point. Okay, that's cool. Thanks for all the insights. And now I think we can move on to the next topic, which is actually before that, we said AI designing AI products in Buffer. Do you have AI features or not? I think you do have some, right?
We do have, yes. So for creating posts, you can ask AI to help you create posts, rewrite posts, so basically this type of tools. And also in community, we've introduced replies, like AI replies, where you have the 3 or 4 ready replies good to go for the comment that you're working on. So these are like 2 the most important things. We'll also be using AI for insights, which is like something that we're working on. And that would be, I think, a very advanced use case of using AI, because the other ones are more analyzing text and giving you a good proposed text. But for example, for comments, we also do this thing where we analyze your past posts and past comments so that the reply sounds like you. So it's not a reply that like, you would never send, because that would just be counterintuitive for people, I think, that all the replies that we're proposing just like don't make sense. So that's a big component here as well.
That's a good one. And that's a value that I see into using, because some people say, yeah, Claude is going to replace all SaaS products. And like you have these kind of stupid statements of like, it's going to be so powerful that many products are going to be relevant. Sure, for the very basic products. But if I think about Buffer, there is a lot of value into having it to actually being trained, like having a specialized AI model being trained on past data around you, right? Like I'm using, for example, Stanley for writing some LinkedIn content. And it's one of the things that is cool is that trained only for LinkedIn. And I can see how the post is going to fit the characters limit, the post that perform, it understands that it needs to write a great hook, because if you do LinkedIn versus Instagram, it's 2 different platforms with very different audiences and needs as well. So yeah, trained AI models for specific use cases, for me, it's a fascinating topic where I can see a lot of value. And one of the examples is what you exactly served.
Yeah, but I also had this thought about AI in the products. So we went through the phase where products were kind of like highlighting, we're using AI. Hey, this is an AI-driven feature or AI feature. And I feel that now, for 2 reasons, we need to skip that. People kind of feel like AI is table stakes in many cases, so you don't have to be like, this is the AI suggestion. No, it's a suggestion. It's an AI written post. It's a suggestion of a post. And the same thing, so people are, I think, tired with like gradients everywhere and AI screaming at them from every corner of the product. The gradients part is like, I fell to that, and then I was like, okay, no, let's not do gradients all over the interface. But the other thing is also incorporating AI features, so mixing AI features and non-AI features in one product. You don't want to, so for example, for insights, we don't want to necessarily differentiate that this is an AI insight and this is just the coloration of data with an AI insight. Merge everything together, assume that things are that we're using AI for getting these insights, etc. Unless, of course, users opt out, which will be an option as well. But I think from the design perspective, it will be so much easier to merge those two experiences together without highlighting that this is AI and this is not AI, because it doesn't matter anymore unless it's like revolutionary AI thing that you add to the product and you really want to tell the story. For things that are just usual, I wouldn't really highlight it anymore. I think the times have changed a lot.
Yeah, that's a good one. And it's an interesting one because I hear from some people that they say that you should always label AI features as AI features and explain that this comes from AI, but it really depends. It's one of the examples where I like to say that there is no, is it the phrase in English golden recipes? Like that there is no one size fits all solution that you either say or don't say. It really depends. If it's like a critical piece of info that could be wrong and it's very critical, you should say, hey, this is from AI, be careful with it, for example. But in what you said, like on the suggestions, I don't care if the suggestion comes from AI or from some other kind of technology. It's just a proposal for the comment. What I love to hear is that, hey, our suggestions actually look into past comments that you've made, and we give you suggestions based on that. This is useful, but not the fact that it's using an LLM or Claude or ChatGPT behind the scenes. So yeah, that's I hear you. Yeah.
So what you said about being transparent, like, we're using AI, could be wrong. Here is a hint text. Here is something like, or you can adjust your voice and tone because we're using AI. That's something that we definitely should be present in the products. But visual highlighting and like just screaming all over the interface that this is AI, that's what I'm aiming. Like, I'm like, okay, this is not necessary anymore. And people are getting annoyed with that.
Yeah, that's a very good one. And something that I can totally see like that it has happened in the past where, it also, because it's a new technology, it's like it's a release strategy, but now we're at a point where AI already exists for a few years and now it's kind of the new normal in a way. So you don't need to highlight it as much anymore. Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
It's like cringy to highlight like, hey, this is a suggestion written by AI. Yeah, of course, every single product does this because it's the easiest thing to implement an LLM to ask you, like, to give you a suggestion. Of course, like, show me something impressive, then say that this was made by AI. Do like obvious things.
And from a design point of view, it's also distraction. Like, why do I need to label it, like to highlight this is a cool AI feature or something? Yeah, like I need to focus on the value. Like the value is not AI. The value is a personalized comment that sounds like you in this case.
Yes. I think that the other side of the story is label it because people need to be aware. So if they want to opt out, they can opt out. And I totally understand it. But I think that people who have the mindset of, I don't want to use AI for anything when using a given product, they will go to settings, they will disable it. You just need to give them ability to disable. Majority of users, unfortunately, fortunately, depend how you think about it. But like they don't mind as long as they get the great result. Just take my data, take everything. People are like, okay, whatever. It doesn't matter to me that much.
That's a big topic. And with KnowledgeAll, one of the teams we're working with, it's a knowledge-based software that has been used by big enterprises as well. They're very sensitive with AI there. And because there's a lot of compliance, security, and so on. And the way we implemented AI has been very different as well. It's not just connecting Claude and then calling it a day. It's, we give them more control. We make sure the data don't get shared. It's like many small details on how you're going to implement it. So the sensitivity on data and who you're serving is also an interesting one on how you're going to expose AI and how you're going to design it. Something to always keep in mind. That's a very good point.
Exactly. And it's also for enterprise products, you have to be very honest and transparent about using AI, what AI you're using. The same thing for some companies have policy, no money to Google or no money to Amazon. And then you have issues in your contract where it's like, okay, but we're using these companies. So with AI, it's the same thing. Some companies are like, we don't want to use certain companies or we don't want to like indirectly give money to certain companies. And you have to eliminate that. So that's a very different story than when you're appealing to single creators, let's say, or smaller audiences. They might have this philosophy, but like the scale and probability of that is super low.
Yeah, fully agree. Oh, let me think. I'm thinking about the next one. I think we're gonna jump into the onboarding and time to value because it's an always relevant topic that every SaaS founder always thinks about because it's so critical to adding new customers and actually building a sustainable SaaS products. My question, I have a bunch of questions, but what I would be curious to hear here is a bit of stories and not tactical advice, but more like practical examples through real stories of projects that you worked related to the onboarding, actually. I'm not sure if Buffer would be the company you'd like to share examples from or some other company that you worked with in the past. Yeah. My question on this would be, what is a project that comes to you when you think about onboarding a time to value, where you're like, okay, we had an impact, we did something interesting, and that you would love to share with other people, with other founders?
Sure. Onboarding in general is quite an interesting topic because if you do it wrong, it impacts every single thing in your business. And I see many companies still being stuck in this mindset of, I need an onboarding that shows this is what you can do in the product. Tell me who you are. Tell me how many team members you have. And it's just this lengthy onboarding that doesn't serve users because it doesn't change the UI. It's just an information that you want to get or some screens that you want to show. In some cases, it is necessary. But my philosophy and what I've seen the best results with is get people into the product as soon as possible and then work with empty states and some prompts in the product to guide them through the onboarding process. And of course, the disclaimer, some products need setup. Some products you need to connect some things to them to make them work, all of that. But many products, they just have this unnecessary onboarding screens was like, welcome to the product. And then the next thing is like, this is where you create a project. This is what you do with blah, blah, blah. And people are just like, skip. They go to the product and now they're like, I haven't paid attention to the onboarding because I wanted to skip and I wanted to see the product. Now I'm in an empty state that is not designed very well for just being empty and for me being uninformed. And then they don't know what to do. So you're designing in the wrong way. For Buffer, for example, for community, we used to have very simple empty states. Now our empty states are more focused on showing what's going on. So like you've replied to all the comments, but also giving you a prompt of create a post that boosts engagement or like see this metric or see how many comments you've replied to. So they are a little bit more engaging, which is great. But also for Buffer, we've run experiments in the past where we had just a regular onboarding with this is Buffer, welcome to Buffer, connect your channels, blah, blah, blah. Connecting channels without seeing the interface was a no-go. People don't want to connect their social media channel that they value so much to the product that they haven't even seen yet. They don't know, hey, is it trustworthy? So putting people into the UI with empty states for channel, like connect the channel on the side instead of blocking them from seeing UI. That's a way better solution in my opinion. There are also solutions where we have like a checklist basically of things that you can do, which makes sense for some products where you have like share a post, reply to a comment, create an idea. That makes sense. In some products, it doesn't make sense because when you have a more workflow where people don't use all the features, it wouldn't make sense to ask them to go through the onboarding checklist. But that works sometimes as well. But like I'm all for empty states. The better empty states you have and the sooner you get people into the product, that would be my recommendation.
Yeah. On the channels that you said that they wanted to try before they connect, what was the solution you mentioned there?
So instead of having like a dialogue where connect a channel before getting into the product, first now we get them into the product where you can see like an empty calendar, what you would normally see posts. And on the side, you can see where a channel list would be with call to action of like connect Instagram, connect Facebook, connect something else. And you can click from there. And that makes so much more sense because you see what the product is before you commit to connecting a channel.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, that's a very good point to think about onboarding. It's like, what is the level of commitment that you're asking in the onboarding flow and what do they need to see before that in order to accept that kind of level of commitment? What you said actually go for it before I said the example.
Exactly. For example, being able to use Buffer Composer to create an idea for a post, not to create a post that you are scheduling and sending, but you create an idea. So you can see how the flow goes, that I can write something, I can attach things, I can select channels, whatever. And then I'm like, okay, I want to post now. So let me connect the channel. It just feels so much more natural when it comes to exploration than first committing to connecting a channel and then exploring the product. And then your first thought when you ask people in advance for connecting a channel is like, okay, but how do I disconnect if I don't like the interface? Like, it will give me another trouble? Do I have to contact support? Like, people have so many questions in advance. It's a big commitment before seeing the UI.
Yeah, it's a good one. And at ZenMate, for example, we have these long account setup flow that you've been mentioning that like people still think that this is like the right way. And it's a very interesting one because with some of the teams we don't. And it's what it says, like some products require that setup. And it's also like in terms of, it depends on the audience sometimes, but also like the level of commitment you ask. So for example, at ZenMate, we asked them to put the credit card before starting the trial. And that's on purpose so that we can filter out who is not serious about using the product, for example. Because also now the brand is mature and people know about it. That's another thing to keep in mind that can have an impact on the onboarding is your brand power and the brand awareness you have can have an impact on what kind of commitment you can ask from people. If you're in your startup that people don't really trust yet, asking for the credit card may not be the best idea. It really depends on how legitimate, like how trustworthy you look like as well.
That's true. And also, you need to pay attention to how it's going to impact your metrics and what you're aiming for. So, for example, with another client, I had the situation where we used to ask for credit card information before they started the trial. And then the conversion rate after the trial was X, let's say. But then we've came up with, okay, let's give a free trial to everyone and then ask people when they finish the trial for credit card information. And the conversion rate from that was way lower. So even in relative numbers, so when you're paying attention to like the conversion rate, you need to also pay attention to how it's going to impact metrics that you're aiming for. So we gathered more people, but at the end of the day, less of this group signed up, but not in relative numbers, but in subjective numbers. Let's say 100 people converted, but then with the second method, 80 people converted. We were like, okay, that's clearly not working. And it's also weird that we've casted a wider net and from these people, they didn't convert. So you may think intuitively with the credit card information that it's a wrong thing to do. Depends on the audience, depends on the products as well.
Yeah. And it's like the final metric, which is like the revenue, like how many people. It's what they say that with the reverse trial, which is when you ask for the credit card, you have lower conversion rate, but higher from visitor to sign up, but higher between sign up and paid customer. So in the end, it's like how much revenue do you add from these is like an important one to keep in mind. And also like for the case of ZenMate, like which is a smaller bootstrap team, it's also resource management. It's how many people can you really truly support and keep your support quality very high. So sometimes you want to use friction as a filter to people that are not really motivated and just going to add noise into the support team without any return. So that's what I love with design, because you really need to think like a founder. It's like, what is this business? What is the brand awareness that it has? What are the resources that this team has? What is the milestone we're working towards? What does this business need to achieve within the next 6 months? And you need to take all this into consideration and then design around these constraints alongside with what's best for the user and what is the easiest. So that's what I love with product design. It feels like you always need to balance the user and the business and find that sweet balance that is going to make both successful.
Yes, and then metrics are good. Like sometimes you're predicting one thing and the metrics show the other thing, and your job is to figure out why. And sometimes you just, okay, let's revert to what was working, even though we're not 100% sure why it was working better, but the evidence is it was working better. So like theory is one thing, and being open to actually changing your mind is a very important thing as well.
That's very true. Right now we're doing an A/B test in the onboarding flow of ZenMate, where when people sign up, we designed the aha moment flow. So the idea is that the moment you start your trial, we're going to take you through 5 steps where you're going to receive your first automated SMS, because that's one of the big things that people love about ZenMate. But it's interesting because right now it's underperforming. It's been only 1 week, so we don't have any statistical kind of a significance where we can say, okay, this is not performing well. But I'm really curious. Maybe it's going to turn out that for some reason people don't like it, and it turns them down from kind of like it creates more, I don't know, like anxiety, and they don't convert. I'm not sure, but it's an interesting one to see. So I fully agree that you also need to have like your eyes open and be willing to change your mind, even if you think that an idea you have is a great idea. Because we may prove you wrong.
And also what you said about we want them to see the message coming. This is also connected to time to value. And in time to value, so how quickly people realize the value of the product, you need to identify the value correctly. So maybe for them, receiving a message is not, it's added value, but it's not the main value that they're looking for. Maybe they're looking for something totally different. when exploring the product for the first time. So I've noticed also that many teams, including myself, I'm also guilty of that, identify that this is the key thing and the aha moment. And it turns out it's one of them, but it's not the main one that people are looking for. And you test, you experiment, but sometimes you get surprised about like what people actually get convinced by.
That's very true. And one thing that we've learned the last few months from the research we've been doing, thanks to Claude, by the way, that's another use case of AI that I love, user research, is that the aha moment can be different between the segments of users. And segments, the way that we create them is what is the tool they come from, because this can tell us a lot about the maturity of their business alongside with the size of their team. So if a cleaning business is coming, let's say, from Google Calendar and they have 1 or 2 people, we know probably they need the automated communications, let's say. But if they have like 15 people and they come from an alternative software, then probably maybe they had too many bugs on that platform, or maybe the invoicing is not good. Like it really depends on which tool they're coming from. So the aha moment can be different between every segment, and ideally you need to personalize that flow between every segment.
And this is the excellent use case for asking questions in advance. So the thing that I just hate when it's just aimless, because no matter how you answer, you're landing on the same UI in the same place. But if you're asking like 2 questions, what you said, like the size of the team and the tool that you've been using so far, and you land them in a completely different flow, or the empty state looks different, or the checklist looks different, then it's completely justifiable. And many products can actually see higher conversions from that, which I think it takes work to adjust in the interface. So the research is one thing, but then the technical implementation of these flows is challenging in many cases, I find, but it might be so worth it.
Yeah, fully agree. Cool. Looking at the time, we have a few minutes left. So one of the topics we were discussing we want to cover is the design debt, actually. So I think maybe we can go through that and just get your quick thoughts on the topic, because the topic you've spent a lot of time thinking about, you've even written, is it an ebook or like some kind of a mini course? Like I think it's like a playbook, essentially.
It's a series of articles on the website. Yeah.
Around design debt. So it's a topic you spend a lot of time thinking about, and I would love to get your if I keep it very open-ended, design debt, and then ask you, what are your thoughts on the topic? Like, what are the things you want a founder to hear from you on the topic? What would that be? It's super open-ended, but I'm really curious to see what comes up.
Sure. Design debt is like analogical thing to technical debt. So basically you're adding things without revising them, and then it creates this Frankenstein with a lot of issues, and then you have to pay the debt to actually move forward. And I've seen that in many startups where they didn't have a dedicated designer at the beginning, or they were working with multiple contractors, and design debt accumulated in the product and also in the design system, in the design files. This is more interesting for designers, but I think in the product is more interesting for founders. Especially, I've seen these things coming up when it comes to navigation and navigation patterns, and something maybe to pay attention to for founders. Every time you want to add something new to the product, the pattern that I've seen so much was like, let's just add another tab at the top. And then you end up with too many tabs, things that are unimportant being at the very top and visible all the time. And then struggling to add more things because we're running out of space, and we're not going to like indefinitely add tabs at the top. And then it goes down to navigation within the pages and also the information architecture. So just creating a product and then adding something automatically in a certain way is probably not the good way to go. Every time you add a new thing to the product, you need to think about how to review the navigation, how to redo it, and how to make it the best for people to access certain information. So for example, many products have settings at the top, and then they add like API related things there. Maybe we need to separate those 2 experiences for the users, or maybe unimportant things or setup things also in the main navigation that user goes through once and maybe changes once later on after a year of using a product, and they are sitting there just indefinitely. So I've seen navigation being a major issue, onboarding also being a major issue, where we add
getting outdated.
Getting outdated, and also adding the onboarding elements like popovers, etc. And then you end up with you're not testing a new user experience every time. And the new user experience ends up being, you enter the product and you're attacked with 10 dialogues and popovers and things that are going on. So
Popover
that's also
yeah.
popover, hints, highlights, different suggestions. So that's also design debt that's getting accumulated. But I think that the source of problem is usually not having an in-house designer, or not having, maybe not in-house, but like dedicated designer for a product who takes care of all these experiences.
Committed, I would say. Yeah. In-house means that they're committed and they're there every day to pay attention. Yeah.
Exactly. It can be an external contractor. It can be also an agency or whatever team you're using, but they need to be focused on the product long term, not necessarily just like ad hoc work.
Side note, completely off topic, but because you mentioned, like, that's something that we've been working on our positioning at Love at First Try, which is we call ourselves in-house design team as a service, because the moment you say agency, it feels like you don't truly own the product. But the thing with us, like, we own it. We're there like every week. It's just that we don't work like 8 hours per day like an in-house designer would work. Yeah, it's just a bit of a different model, but it's the ownership part that you mentioned that is very, very important. Is you need somebody to own it and lead the experience and actually worry about these things. Owning something means that you feel stress about things not being right, essentially. And you need somebody to be responsible to feel stress when things are not, so that they're going to fix it. That's how I like to describe ownership.
Yes, true. I think oh, sorry.
Go for it, sorry.
The ownership part and taking responsibility for the design long term, that's the thing that really matters. Because in some agency work, or sometimes even as a contractor, you're like, okay, I'm done with it. Let's move forward. I have another client. I have another call. I have another whatever.
Exactly.
And you don't even learn from the mistakes that you've made in this particular project, or the things that you've added over time, and you never, for example, come back to them. So having someone dedicated with dedicated attention, that's a large value for founders. I know it's sometimes more of a commitment or more of an expensive thing to do, but it's worth it, especially now that people don't accept bad design anymore as clients. That's the thing that has changed over the last 15 years, that it used to be acceptable. Yeah, it used to be acceptable to like learn a tool or have a course about a tool. Now, if people open it and they don't know how to use it, they're just going to close it and never come back again.
Yeah. Indeed, the standards are getting higher on these, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a bigger topic on this one that I spent a lot of time thinking of. Actually, it came to me that you've been talking about design that I didn't have in mind to discuss this today. But one of the things that I think a lot about building a company myself, but also leading design for some SaaS companies, is the whole idea that you have 2 products. The one is the product you're designing for as a designer, and the other product is the process you've designed to design the end product, right? Yes. So as a designer, I feel I own 2 products, the process and the end product that the users engage with. And the process that I find very fascinating and something like insanely important, because it's the one that is going to define if things are going to happen or not, because many problems are process problems. Of course, it's like people problems as well. So you need to have the right people. Like if somebody, let's say it's a bad designer, like no process will make them a good designer, but a great designer to thrive, the process can have a big impact on the amount of value that they can produce within a company and the impact they can have on the design quality. Small example of a process is that on the way that we work weekly, we have the growth release and the delight release. So one problem that I faced in the past was delight was never prioritized because we have all these bugs. We have all these features we need to build. Nobody cares about a nice illustration over here. But what if we make it somehow like in the design sprint feasible to add a delight weekly by allocating a few hours? You don't need to have like 100K brand designer, your payroll to do that and so on. And it started happening. Companies that wouldn't pay for delight, suddenly they're paying for delight. They don't mind, and we add delight every week. I was like, okay, that was for me the moment. It was like process is really a thing that can have an impact, because I actually took something that was never happening and suddenly it's happening. Brit, for example, she used to work at Zapier, and she told me, hey team, like we didn't do this kind of things in Zapier. We never had any kind of delight release. What is this thing? Mm-hmm. Like how can I plan delight releases? When she started working with a new team we signed. And it's my favorite example of like process having a real impact. And in the case of design depth, that's also a very interesting one. One idea we had that we tested a bit, and it kind of worked actually. So I would say it's one of the processes that we still have on our playbook is a weekly activation workshop. So the idea is that we all say in the design community, let's not say all, like me and you, we're both on the same page on this, that onboarding never ends, right? So people sign up, they do the first time user onboarding, but then you need to think about onboarding constantly because it can get outdated, but also when you release new features, you need to make sure you onboard people. And onboarding, if you think about it, is like an ongoing project that never ends. So if I look at the process, we're busy with projects, but we never think about onboarding because we're busy with other stuff. So what if we could find a way where we think about weekly? And if the first thought is, let's add a project for that. But no, we don't have the resource and the time to do a project. So I've been thinking about what is like an 80-20 solution. What is a small commitment we could afford doing that could have tiny impact that can compound over time? And the idea was to have a weekly hackathon, me and Amar, for example, the CEO, where we actually think about onboarding. And we're like, okay, let's go and sign up for the product once every month and see if it feels right or not. And if it doesn't feel right and something is off, what is an 80-20 way to fix it? Not redesign the full onboarding because that's a project, but what is a way we can fix things within 2 hours? So this is an example of a process like the monthly onboarding flow testing, the weekly activation workshop that we did for 5-6 months. And now we're fully focused on onboarding like it's the main project that turned out to be a good one in terms of like impact, but also from a design point of view to actually find the issues, because leading design is fun, but at the same time, it's so many things to lead. Like a product has so many features, like how it's really hard to keep the quality of all these really, really high. So yeah, that's another example. And last comment is also like AI, something I'm happy about. I really dream about the moment where I'll be able to do more front ends because of AI without being a front end developer and without having engineers to hate me because my code sucks and they have to clean up AI trashy code.
Yeah.
And I can actually control the implementation of the visual details, because that's another part of design dev that I see accumulating is the difference between what you design and what gets implemented. And I hear it from almost every team, and it's a real struggle. And if you can have designers actually do the thing, that's going to be a big one to reduce the amount of design dev that gets collected. And also it's a process change again, because designers now do some UI development with AI.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's good for it's a good use case for using Claude Code and designers owning the design system in Storybook as well. So like if you need some design changes to the components, you can do that. But I wanted to touch on the design debt and what you said about revising the onboarding and looking into that. That's a great idea. In the past, in the teams that I worked with, we had this idea of dedicating like 5 or 10% of time to design debt issues. But usually it was hard to find the resources for implementation. And also they were a little bit out of context from the projects that we were working on. So we've changed that and wanted to work on design that projects. When a new project starts, we need to see the list of design that issues, see if any of it fits, and we can fix them. But what I started doing recently, and I found a lot of success in that, is like a different version of what you're doing with onboarding. I have it in my calendar to have like 1 or 2 hours, my own brainstorming session. I need to engage my team, but I do it for myself for now, about time to value. So like how to shorten time to value in the product or in community right now, which onboarding is a big part of it, but sometimes it's the continuous onboarding. So how to allow people to discover new features, or maybe the value of, reply or a default or a saved reply would be discovered better in a certain way. So as you said, we're not creating like new projects and doing the whole process around it. It's like a 1-hour brainstorming session and maybe one task for a developer for the upcoming sprint. But it allowed me to think about value and providing value for users outside of the ongoing projects that we're working on. And I've noticed that because of that, we got to fixing things that we were postponing for a long time because we didn't have time for a big project commitment. And it turns out our brainstorming session and an hour from development time fixes the 90%. We're 90% there. So evolution of what you said about onboarding. Also, you can like do the workshop for time to value. I recommend it 100%.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah. And I really love like not reviewing the onboarding, but the time to value, to actually scope it into something very, very specific, because onboarding is broader and includes this one. So yeah, to keep it more focused. And it's also beautiful, an example of like, again, like we call it as the 80-20 principle, which is, I think Pareto or something like that. It's called that principle. And it's always interesting that it's about figuring out the process where you're going to avoid creating a big project, because it's the easy thing to say, yeah, we need a project, let's leave it for later. Then you can just focus on the thing that you already have. So yeah, it's an interesting one, the whole thing of process, which, it includes like skills around like product management, prioritization, different kind of of areas. And that's why I find fascinating, like being a lead designer in the team, because you need to be a jack of all trades. You need to think about so many things at the same time and balance them out somehow.
And I think also there's one more factor here, good leadership from the design perspective and also from the founders. So recently, Joel, the founder of Buffer, he gave us a very clear direction of we're not releasing unless we're proud of the work that we've done, which is a very different direction from release whatever, test whatever, and we're just gonna ship fast, ship whatever. He was like, okay, we're at the stage of the product where we've achieved certain level of maturity, have our client customer base, they expect certain things from us, and also the quality needs to get higher. And we will not get to the higher quality of the interface by releasing just whatever or half-baked things. And now at this stage, we can afford waiting a little bit more, revising the thing a little bit more so that we are actually releasing something that people will come back to. And I totally agree with that, because with new features, especially, and with improvements, person tests something once and they just have a really bad experience. There's a high probability that they will never come back to it, even if we release an improvement or a new version of it. So I know it's not a universal thing. Sometimes you have to release fast, but changing the mindset into releasing things that we are proud of, it changed perspective and approach of many people, I think, and gave this like freedom to actually speak up and being like, hey, I don't think it meets the quality bar that we're aiming for. Let's wait a little bit and release something better. Very non-tech, non-Silicon Valley mindset, but I think it improved the Buffer quality for like
Actually,
a lot.
On this one, you mentioned something important. What the CEO said is that we're at this stage of the company where we can do that. That's a big thing. Exactly. That I started realizing in the last few years, that not every company is the same. So it's not either ship fast and break things or don't ship fast at all. It depends. Like I think for 9 out of 10 questions, my answer nowadays is it depends. Because there are many variables to look into. Like in this case, Buffer is a company with a really strong brand for so many years and a lot of features under it. So this is a good one. Like you can afford it financially. That's the one thing. Like you don't need to grow, let's say, maybe like crazy and all these things that maybe a new company that raised money is looking at. And also is the expectation from the crowd, because you're such a mature company compared to like an early stage company or compared to a smaller company, like ZenMate, let's say, that is around a few years, but serves a different audience. And this also, one thing that Amar mentioned in the past that I kind of like as an idea is that you have the Apple style features where you need to perfect them. That's how he describes it, that they need to be great before they go out. And some others that it doesn't really matter. It's okay if it's a bit broken or if it doesn't really stick to every standard we have. So yeah, what you're releasing can be also like a big thing. If it's a brand new feature that you really need to promote and make exciting, or if it's a tiny change that doesn't matter too much.
Yes, and you can also lower the bar to what you're releasing to your beta community. So if you have your beta users who signed up for that and they are prepared for, okay, this will not be perfect. There are some issues with this feature that we are still developing. I think that's like a fair proposition. But some companies at like a mature level of development, we cannot afford to give people something that doesn't work. That's destroying our image, trust in the brand, etc. So it's being able to afford spending more time and not being able to afford to lose the reputation that we've been working on for so many years.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Really, really interesting stuff today. My last question, because I know we're over time and I don't want to hijack your schedule, is what is your favorite SaaS product at the moment? Or maybe mobile app. So it doesn't have to be a B2B SaaS. What is your favorite product at this moment and why? And by favorite, I mean a product that you feel excited about, you actually use frequently, and you kind of love. It doesn't have to be anything groundbreaking. It's just like whatever comes to your mind. And I'm interested into the why part as well.
I'm definitely excited about Claude. That's an obvious, just like work-wise, excited about Claude and like the whole AI thing and how can I, there's still a lot to explore there. So I think that's a good thing. And also the results that you're getting from Claude comparing to like ChatGPT. It's just like, I've seen this meme and it made me laugh so hard that like, I've been using ChatGPT and I thought that AI, like my job is safe and AI will not take over. Then I switched to Claude and I'm like, yeah, it will take over within 6 months. So I'm quite excited about that. And I would love to see the UI design tool from them. I don't know if it's a rumor or not, but hopefully it's not. But for like private things, privately and my personal life, I'm in love with exercise trackers and calorie trackers and how you can adjust the interface and you can adjust everything to your needs. It's becoming more and more popular with people who are like into health and fitness and all of that. You're tracking your metrics, and it's not tracking your metrics as in my watch tracks things for me. It's like taking control over what you're doing and how you're doing things and customizing these products to fit you. So for example, if you're tracking food, you have to have custom foods or custom meals and doing things, whatever. It's like efficiency in that part. I'm looking forward to see like how those type of tools will develop, because I had a feeling that like we've reached the ceiling there, because there's only so much you can do. They started experimenting with AI regarding like you take a photo of a meal and it calculates calories, which like doesn't work because you can hide oil below everything and it just doesn't work. But having fitness trackers and food trackers combined in like one tool, and AI analyzes your results and adjusts your training based on how you performed last week and adjusts your food and macros based on your goals and how you're doing so far. That's great, because people like, there are users who want to take control, but there are users who like want this trainer person, AI trainer, whoever it is, or nutritionist. So I'm curious to see that, especially that like health and fitness is such an important topic now when people are just like,
yeah, it's a good one.
We've been neglecting that for a long time as a society, and people are coming back.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's really interesting, like how AI is going to be applied there and help people actually have a healthier life. And this is like the use case of technology that I'm excited about, like improving the design quality, reducing design debt, like bringing more health into the world. Like that's the only thing that I truly hate about AI is the fear mongering. It's like everybody's going to lose their job. AI is going to eat us alive. Like, come on. And it creates this perception of like, it creates like a bias and like a behavior that you don't want to try it because you have like a toxic relationship with it. And like, no, I can also like fall in love with this. It's something good. It really depends on how you use it. And the whole thing with replacing the job, I don't know. It's kind of it's a big topic, not for today.
Yes, but every profession, like if you ask a developer, if you ask a designer, if you ask a doctor, if you ask a lawyer, everyone, those are like very popular use cases, but every single professional says like, hey, it's great for some things, but I don't see it replacing the whole industry because it has these shortcomings that, you know, cannot be fixed right now, or it gives me bad results, or it's like cannot be trusted 100% of the time. I think we're still safe for like 5-7 more years, hopefully.
Yeah, true. Yeah, you never know what's going to happen like in a full decade. And on this one, what I'd like to always say is that is the concept of ownership, right? Like that's like the last comment that I want to do from my side, which is sure, AI can do stuff on the design, but somebody needs to own decisions. And in a product where you're building like many features, you have a lot of areas, you need people to own areas. So maybe the teams are going to get smaller and there will be more independence and autonomy per person compared to the past. 100%. This is already happening. But replacing everybody with AI, I don't really see that coming. Like, I believe teams are going to get smaller and we will have more companies popping up. So the market is going to open up as well because more people will be able to create software companies. That I can see it happening, but not really the whole idea of like AI just leading the world. This is kind of I don't know, it's like a crazy story. Maybe I'm too close-minded. That's also like an insecurity that I have sometimes. Am I too close-minded? Am I thinking it's too small? Like, do I need to think bigger here? I don't know. Like time will show. But yeah, with AI, that's for me like the big thing is save the right mindset and embracing the right way. And we hired actually an AI mentoring that recently pull in, and she's building an AI product analytics tool, and she's also offering some AI consulting on the side, and hired her to help us and kind of stay on top of AI and also train us on how to use Claude better. Because honestly, it sounds very simple. You just drop a prompt and boom, you get magic out of it. No, like you need to understand like many things on how it works. It's like, honestly, I feel like when I was feeling back when I was starting Ruby on Rails, like as an engineer in the early days, I'm learning a new programming language. I need to understand the constraints, the concepts, you had like the model view controller set up there. Now with with AI, you have other things. So you really need to understand the technology and find ways to leverage it, like in specific use case. So yeah, it's very creative and fun, but can also be overwhelming because of the way it's introduced to the world. I feel
Yes,
like the aggressiveness of it. But yeah, I
true.
mean, that's life. It's never easy. So we're going to figure it out.
See, the AI created a job here for this person.
See? Yeah, that's
It
also the
didn't
other
steal a
thing.
job.
Exactly. Like the market, that's the other thing. If the market gets bigger, like especially for designers, like you're going to have more work to do probably because you're going to have more companies out there and more people who need some design direction because it's the same thing always. Like AI can produce like 100 different designs. Which one feels right? It's a very complex decision to take that is influenced by many variables. And a founder cannot do this full time. Like they have to build a company, bring people, and so on. So yeah, it's a good observation that actually what we're discussing here is creating a new job. And last comment on this, because it really fits, is the client we signed on January, the team that we started working with, RTC, the reason they're doing the project they're doing is because of AI, because they're a community for women in tech in US. I think, I'm not sure if they're the biggest one or in the top 3, but they're pretty big in US and they have really great partners and everything. And they want to build a custom platform for their community. Maybe, Circle, where you can have like a
Yes.
community. So they want to make a custom version of this because they have many events and sub communities and chat, like many things that Circle wouldn't be good at, but they needed like, they got quotes in the past of like $1 million to build it. And we're like, we don't have the funds to build something like that. But now with AI, they need a design team with a lot of experience that can do branded product and a great dev team of 2 people, and then they can build it because of AI. So it actually created more work also. Like in the past, they couldn't hire us because they wouldn't do it because it was too expensive. So yeah, it's very interesting with AI. There are 2 ways to look at it. And nowadays I like and I embrace more the positive way. It's like think in an optimistic way and that the society is evolving and creating more cool things. Yeah, it's not a society where it's just AI is gonna eat us all and everybody's gonna be starving and all these stupid things that people communicate.
I agree with that. And I like what you said about creating more cool things. Like the technology and development is generally about it. Like we could be still calling taxis with our phones and waiting for a person to arrive, but we have Uber and we have other like car sharing services and whatever. It's just like creating a better experience and more adjusted experience to what people expect and make life easier. I don't see anything wrong with that as long as we are like reasonable.
Exactly. That's a caveat. Yeah, good point.
I got it. Yeah.
Beautiful. So yeah, thanks a lot for today, for your time. It was a really, really nice episode with many cool things that we discussed.
Thank you so much for having me. The time flew by. It was a pleasure talking to you, as always.
Anytime.